The 25 Interesting Facts About the Grinch. Number 25. His first literary appearance. The Grinch first appeared before the public in the book How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Written by Theodor Seuss Geisel, known worldwide as Dr. Seuss, and first published in 1957. In this work, the character is presented as a green, solitary creature who, from his lair high on a mountain, looks down on the Christmas joy of the Houille people. In the original book, Dr. Seuss's illustrations show a grumpy-looking Grinch with a thin build and long, bony hands. Although his complexion is not precisely detailed in this printed version, the Grinch's spiteful personality and sarcastic wit are already part of his identity. The story offers a critical look at excessive consumerism and highlights the importance of empathy and understanding, values that would become the essence of Dr. Seuss's Christmas message. Through his first literary appearance, the Grinch established himself as a complex character, embodying the idea that the true meaning of Christmas cannot be measured in gifts or decorations. Ultimately, his evolution from antagonist to someone capable of understanding human warmth was a key factor in his permanence in popular culture and his subsequent success in other media. Number 24. The Curious Change of Color. In his original conception, as he appears in Dr. Seuss's 1957 book, the Grinch did not have a defined characteristic color, as the illustrations were mainly in black, white, and some details in red. However, the character acquired his iconic green color in 1966, when animator Chuck Jones produced the television special, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, for CBS. This was the first time that the Grinch was shown in the deep green hue that is now inevitably associated with his image. The color change was not the result of an explicit instruction from Dr. Seuss, but rather a creative choice by Jones, who felt that bright green would give the character a more striking presence on screen. This aesthetic decision was so successful and memorable that the Grinch has since been depicted almost exclusively in that hue, both in animated adaptations and in merchandising and promotional material. With this chromatic adjustment, the Grinch consolidated a unique and unmistakable image, becoming an immediately recognizable visual symbol. Green not only reinforces his mischievous air and distant character, but also makes him a reference within the Christmas imagery, standing out among the color palette traditionally associated with the season. Number 23. The Rise to Fame Thanks to Television. Although the Grinch was born in the pages of a book, his true breakthrough came with the 1966 animated television special, directed by Chuck Jones and produced by MGM. First aired on CBS, the show presented the story of the Grinch stealing Christmas with fluid animation, a distinctive visual style, and a captivating soundtrack, marking the character's first major appearance outside of the literary realm. The animated adaptation managed to capture the essence of the original tale, while retaining its central message about the true value of Christmas. The narration, by actor Boris Karloff, gave the story a slightly sinister, yet at the same time relatable and charming tone. The timely inclusion of songs, such as the famous "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," provided a musical element that made the special an unforgettable experience. This jump to the small screen not only expanded the character's fame, but made him an essential part of many families' Christmas programming. Since then, the Grinch has become a permanent part of the cultural landscape, giving rise to future adaptations, annual re-releases, and subsequent versions that would help keep his popularity alive. Number 22. A dark and charismatic voice. The distinctive tone of the Grinch's voice, both in its 1966 animated version and in other adaptations, has been a key factor in the construction of his character. In that classic television special, Boris Karloff, known for his portrayals of monsters in horror films, lent his voice to this peculiar character. His intonation achieved a perfect balance between the menacing and the eccentric, giving the Grinch an unmistakable personality. The original voice provided nuances that amplified his cynicism and his disdain for Christmas joy, which allowed the audience to feel simultaneously repulsion and fascination for the character. Later, in other versions, different actors have contributed their own vocal interpretation, from a more humorous tone to a more introspective one, but always maintaining the grumpy essence that characterizes him. This auditory aspect has been so relevant that today it is difficult to think of the Grinch without imagining his peculiar way of speaking, which reinforces his identity as one of the most recognized and complex characters in the panorama of children's literature and animation. Number 21. Max, the Faithful Companion. Although the Grinch is usually remembered for his bitterness and his initial disdain for Christmas, he is not completely alone in his cold cave in the mountains. Max, his dog, accompanies him throughout the story, fulfilling an essential role both in the plot and in the characterization of the protagonist. Max, with his docile expression and unquestionable loyalty, contrasts with the Grinch's surly temperament and becomes an endearing presence. In the original story and its adaptations, Max represents a kind of moral compass that contrasts with the selfish attitudes of his master. His good disposition, despite the harsh orders he receives, shows a loyalty that seems indestructible. The relationship between the Grinch and Max not only serves to enrich the plot, but also to suggest, from the beginning, that in the heart of the protagonist there is a space for empathy, even if it is very hidden. Throughout the various interpretations of the story, the figure of Max has remained practically unchanged, reinforcing the idea that, behind the mask of cynicism of the Grinch, there is the possibility of change. In this way, Max plays a key role in highlighting the tension between the emotional isolation of the Grinch and the unbreakable need for emotional ties, reminding us that even the hardest heart can have its own faithful guardian. Number 20. An alter ego of the author. The Grinch is not only a literary creation, but also a reflection, at least partially, of the personal concerns of Dr. Seuss. The author himself recognized on more than one occasion that the character embodied a facet of his personality. That feeling of annoyance in the face of Christmas consumerism and the superficiality that often surrounds the end-of-year celebrations. Through The Grinch, Dr. Seuss channeled his criticism of the loss of the genuine meaning of Christmas, transforming it into a story that confronts the reader with his own attitudes. This personal projection into the character allowed the Grinch to acquire a deeper background, moving away from being simply a cartoonish villain. The character became a vehicle to express intimate frustrations and, at the same time, to sow a message of hope. This psychological complexity, derived in part from the author's reflections, is what keeps the story relevant, reminding us that the most important transformations occur within each individual. Number 19. From Name to Universal Insult. Over the years, the name Grinch transcended the framework of pages and screens to become a commonly used term worldwide. Today, calling someone Grinch is a way of pointing out a person who hates celebrations, shows disdain for general joy, or simply behaves in a mean or grumpy manner. This conversion of the name into a soft and informal insult is a testament to the powerful cultural influence that the character has had. The strength of this appellation lies in the Grinch's rough and antisocial personality, which from the beginning reflected the antithesis of the festive spirit. Thus, the use of the term as an insult works as a simple way of referring to someone who is unable to catch the enthusiasm or camaraderie, whether during Christmas parties or other social events. This linguistic phenomenon demonstrates how a literary and animated character can embed itself deeply into the collective consciousness, altering everyday vocabulary. It is not uncommon to hear in different contexts the accusation, "Don't be a Grinch," making it clear that whoever bears that label is far from human warmth and generosity. Number 18. The heart, 2 sizes too small. One of the character's most memorable traits is the description of the size of his heart, 2 sizes too small. This metaphor, introduced by Dr. Seuss in the original book, underlines the Grinch's lack of empathy, compassion, and ability to emotionally connect before his final transformation. The small size of the heart becomes a visual and literary symbol of his lack of affection. The idea of the tiny heart goes beyond a simple humorous exaggeration. It is a poetic way of expressing the Grinch's disconnection from the world around him. His limited heart cannot understand the value of generosity, conviviality, and shared joy, becoming trapped in his own resentment. This iconic detail helps readers and viewers easily understand the essence of the character and his subsequent growth arc. When the Grinch's heart finally grows and becomes larger, it is not only a physical change, but an emotional and moral transformation, thus marking a milestone in the narrative. Number 17. An anti-consumerist message. Despite the fantastical appearance and childish tone of the original story, How the Grinch Stole Christmas contains a powerful anti-consumerist message. Dr. Seuss used the figure of the Grinch to criticize the excessive emphasis on gifts, decorations, and material opulence typical of the December holidays, suggesting that the true value of the holiday is not found in things, but in people and feelings. The story confronts us with the idea that the essence of Christmas, companionship, solidarity, and love, transcends material possessions. Even as he steals every gift and ornament, the Grinch cannot deprive the Whos of their community spirit, proving that the most authentic traditions do not depend on material goods. This anti-consumerist message, ahead of its time, continues to resonate today, reminding us that the most meaningful celebrations come from empathy, understanding, and family and community togetherness. Number 16. Jim Carrey's Transformation. When the story made the leap to live-action cinema in 2000, it was Jim Carrey who took on the challenging role of the Grinch. His performance was exceptional, thanks in part to a complex physical transformation achieved with the meticulous work of the makeup team led by Rick Baker. The actor spent hours a day undergoing the application of prosthetics, special contact lenses, and an elaborate green suit that covered his entire body. The characterization managed to capture the essence of the character, his sullen air, his exaggerated expressiveness, and his peculiar way of moving. Carrey's gestural elasticity, combined with extreme characterization, allowed the character's contradictory emotions to be reflected on screen. His initial hostility and the slow but profound change he experiences throughout the story. The transformation not only impressed the audience, but also underlined the dedication necessary to embody the Grinch, making Carrey's performance a reference point for all subsequent adaptations. Number 15. Unusual makeup training. Jim Carrey's experience becoming the Grinch was not only an aesthetic challenge, but also a psychological one. The makeup process, which could last up to 8 hours a day, became so exasperating that the actor compared the experience to torture methods. Faced with this situation, the production resorted to an unconventional solution, hiring a former CIA agent specialized in interrogation resistance techniques. The purpose was to help Carrey cope with the mental and physical discomfort that the long makeup session entailed, teaching him relaxation and stress management techniques. Thanks to these unusual methods, the actor managed to adapt better, allowing the daily routine of characterization not to interfere with his performance. This unusual anecdote shows the level of commitment behind the film, as well as the complexity of bringing to life a character as extravagant and visually complex as the Grinch. Number 14. An Unknown Childhood. Dr. Seuss's original work does not detail the Grinch's past or childhood. This lack of background contributed to his enigmatic aura and allowed different adaptations and films to venture to imagine his origins. The 2000 film version, for example, introduced a difficult childhood for the character, showing how exclusion and mockery from his peers contributed to forging his resentment and isolation. While these additions do not come directly from the original text, they help viewers understand the possible motivations behind the Grinch's surly character. At the same time, they highlight the universality of the message. Emotional wounds from childhood can lead a person to behave in a hostile manner, but they also leave open the possibility of healing and redemption. In this way, interpretations that include a childhood for the Grinch do not contradict the spirit of the story, but rather deepen its human dimension, granting it greater psychological complexity. Number 13. The most iconic line. Although the character does not express himself with phrases as recognizable as other literary icons, there is one line that became emblematic: "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch." This line, which comes from the eponymous song of the 1966 animated special, encapsulates the protagonist's unpleasant and malicious character. Over time, this expression became a calling card for the character, alluding to his lack of empathy and his opposition to Christmas joy. The melody and lyrics, performed by Thurl Ravenscroft, although originally without his deserved credit, paint an exaggerated portrait of the Grinch's evilness, using clever adjectives and humorous comparisons. This iconic song has accompanied the character throughout his history, keeping alive the memory of his bitterest side. Thanks to this phrase, any reference to the Grinch quickly refers to his essence: someone willing to ruin the party, but who will ultimately learn a lesson about the true meaning of Christmas. Number 12. The technological version of 2018. The 2018 animated adaptation, produced by Illumination and narrated by Pharrell Williams, represents a modern reinterpretation of the classic. With a luminous visual style, detailed textures, and a Grinch with softer features, this version uses cutting-edge digital technology to refresh the story without betraying the original message. Benedict Cumberbatch lends his voice to the character, giving him a performance that balances the characteristic acidity and sarcasm with more internal and subtle nuances. In addition, the production incorporated contemporary elements that allow new generations to connect with the story. However, the core argument remains intact. The criticism of unbridled consumerism and the vindication of empathy remain at the heart of the plot. In this way, the 2018 version illustrates how the Grinch's legacy can be updated without losing the essence that has made him a Christmas symbol. Number 11. The Uncredited Song from '66. In the 1966 animated special, the song, "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," became an essential component to give character. Its performer, Thurl Ravenscroft, was a well-known voice in the world of dubbing and animation, but, at first, his name did not appear in the end credits. This error caused many viewers to mistakenly attribute the vocal performance to narrator Boris Karloff, who had lent his voice to the Grinch and the story, but not to the song. Eventually, Dr. Seuss and Chuck Jones publicly apologized for the omission, acknowledging Ravenscroft's contribution to the fame and uniqueness of the musical theme. The initial confusion, however, became a curious detail about the production, underlining the importance that a voice can have in the construction of a character and the overall experience of the play. Over time, the correct authorship of this song has been duly established, and Ravenscroft is remembered today as a key piece in the immortalization of the Christmas villain. Number 10. Inspired by personal frustration. The creative spark that gave rise to The Grinch was born, in part, from Dr. Seuss's own frustration at the commercial deformation of Christmas. The author confessed that he had identified with the character to the extent that he saw his irritation reflected in social hypocrisy and the unjustified emphasis on material gifts. That December morning when Dr. Seuss found himself upset and unable to feel the Christmas spirit, The Grinch began to take shape in his imagination. Unlike other stories, the story of The Grinch did not arise only from a literary fantasy, but also from a realistic criticism of the loss of fundamental values on dates marked by unity and generosity. This personal background gives authenticity to the character, showing that, beyond his cartoonish appearance, there is an intimate reflection on the need to rediscover the true meaning of Christmas. The Grinch is therefore not only a literary creation, but also a window into the human concerns of the author, who left a lasting message about the importance of empathy, sharing, and letting go of superficialities. Number 9. A cultural symbol beyond Christmas. Although the story of The Grinch is closely linked to the Christmas season, his figure has transcended the festive calendar to become a symbol of negativity in the face of collective enthusiasm, applicable to almost any event or celebration. The mere mention of the Grinch evokes the image of someone who does not want to be infected by joy, whether at a birthday, a wedding, or a community event. This widespread use demonstrates how the original narrative managed to capture a universal emotion: resistance to the happiness of others. Consequently, the Grinch has come to represent the individual who isolates himself from popular sentiment, who prefers solitude and irony to the warmth of camaraderie. By using it metaphorically, people can point out analogous attitudes in any cultural or social context, giving the character a relevance that goes beyond the boundaries of children's literature and the Christmas season. Number 8. Whoville in the Seuss universe. Whoville, the home of the tiny Whos, not only appears in the Grinch story, but is also part of the rich creative universe of Dr. Seuss. This community is also mentioned in other stories by the author, with variations in its description, but always maintaining the essence of an optimistic, supportive society that constantly celebrates life. This idealized town contrasts with the grumpy figure of the Grinch, highlighting the duality between shared joy and voluntary isolation. The importance of Whoville lies not only in its role as a setting, but in its symbolic function. It represents the core of the values that Seuss wanted to convey: mutual understanding, empathy, and the ability to celebrate existence without depending exclusively on objects or material luxuries. Thus, Whoville becomes the moral and emotional counterpoint that makes the Grinch's transformation arc possible. Number 7. Poetry in composition. Dr. Seuss's prose, with its marked meter and playful rhyme, gives the Grinch story an unmistakable poetic quality. The cadence of the language, the repetitions, and the onomatopoeia make it easy to memorize and turn the story into an almost musical experience, which resonates in the minds of both child and adult readers. This poetic elaboration breaks with the rigidity of conventional narrative, inviting us to enjoy not only the plot, but also the way it is told. The internal poetry of the text contributes to attenuating the dark tone of the character and to softening the social criticism, giving rise to a balanced result, a denunciation against materialism, but presented with lightness and humor. This combination is a fundamental part of Seuss's distinctive seal, who knew how to turn the written word into a rhythmic game that adds depth and charm to his message. Number 6. Two-color illustrations. The original How the Grinch Stole Christmas was published primarily in two tones, black and white, with touches of red. This chromatic limitation, far from detracting from its appeal, accentuated Dr. Seuss's visual ingenuity. The simple, expressive images guided the reader's attention to the facial expressions and dynamics between the Grinch and the Who's, highlighting the narrative tension with a minimum of resources. The contrast between the black of the lines, the white of the background, and the sparse red used in strategic details highlighted the Grinch's inner fury and the warm energy of the Who's. This chromatic sobriety underlined the central message. Human emotions and relationships can be equally understood without the deployment of a saturated palette, emphasizing that narrative value is not measured in the quantity of colors, but in the strength of ideas. Number 5. A magazine debut before the book. Before consolidating itself as a literary classic in book format, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The Grinch had a preliminary appearance in the magazine Red Book. It was there that readers first encountered the character and his peculiar story, experiencing his bad mood and subsequent change of heart through a publication that was more ephemeral than the printed text. This editorial strategy not only served to generate expectation, but also to test the reception of the story among the public. The positive response encouraged the publication of the complete book in 1957, consolidating the Grinch as one of the most emblematic characters in Dr. Seuss's work. In this way, the leap from the magazine to the pages of a book strengthened its cultural impact, guaranteeing its permanence in the collective memory and in family libraries. Number 4. A possible origin of the name. The word Grinch did not exist before Dr. Seuss's creation, so there has been speculation about possible inspirations. Some scholars of his work suggest that the term could be derived from grin, a crooked, sarcastic smile, or that it is simply a word invented to sound harsh and discontented. Dr. Seuss did not offer a clear explanation, leaving his audience to imagine the origin of this enigmatic name. The absence of an official etymology adds mystery and reinforces the uniqueness of the character. Grinch sounds grumpy, harsh, as if by pronouncing it already embodies the grumpy qualities of its protagonist. In this way, the name contributes to the psychological characterization, being in itself an essential part of the atmosphere of the story. Number 3. From paper to 1,000 stages. After conquering paper and screens, the Grinch continued his artistic journey through multiple stage adaptations. Plays, Broadway musicals, and local company productions have recreated the story, fusing the original poetry with choreography, unpublished songs, and costumes inspired by Seuss's illustrations. These productions have allowed the story to remain alive and close, renewing the experience for each new generation of viewers. In the theater, audiences can feel the tension, bitterness, and subsequent transformation of the Grinch with an immediacy that is impossible to match in other media. Live performances expand the artistic repertoire of this story, maintaining its cultural relevance and demonstrating that the message of empathy and redemption can be expressed in countless ways. Number 2. From Villain to Christmas Hero. The Grinch's journey is a rare example of a character who, without renouncing his villainous origins, becomes an icon of the Christmas season. At the end of his story, the Grinch leaves bitterness behind and learns the value of generosity and companionship. This evolution does not make him a traditional hero, but rather a redeemed figure who takes on the celebrations with a bigger heart, now willing to embrace Christmas joy. The Grinch's transformation shows that even the most hostile figures can be transformed by human warmth and understanding. The lesson that no one is condemned to always be an emotional outcast and that shared love can heal the wounds of cynicism makes the Grinch an atypical hero, a living reminder that it is possible to find redemption in the midst of emotional adversity. Number 1. The timeless lesson. The story of the Grinch is not limited to a date on the calendar or a message limited to Christmas. His lesson, that the essence of the celebration lies in solidarity and sincere affection, transcends the original context. Like many classic fables, this tale invites us to reevaluate our priorities, to distinguish the superficial from the valuable, and to recognize that true happiness is found in human ties. In this way, the Grinch reminds us that the festive spirit does not depend on decorations or gifts, but on the ability to share and understand others. His deeply human teaching remains relevant in any era, showing that empathy, generosity, and the will to change can overcome even the strongest barriers of resentment and isolation. Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.